Good evening. Adjust this camera a little bit. Yes. Here we are at the Dominance Academy. I'm Mr. Justin. Still a little sick, so I got my vitamin C. Let me mute my phone. Yeah. So I had some conversations today with some people who really had no idea about lifestyle. It's funny, like when you're in something, and it really could be anything at all. But when you're in something, it seems normal and like regular for you. And then you come across people who are not exposed to what you're exposed to, and it kind of brings you out of your bubble, and you're like, wait a second, oh yeah, there's like people who know nothing about what I'm into and what knowledge I have about a certain something. So yeah, I had a chance to have a conversation with some people who really didn't know anything about the lifestyle, about BDSM lifestyle. And there were some guys and a girl, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, which is great because I often don't get asked a lot of questions by people who know nothing, right? It's always great to be around those kind of people who are just genuinely curious about, what's going on. So they were asking me interesting questions. What the one guy, he's like, well, what if, she's got like, I've heard of these women, they're saying they've got all these like preferences and standards and requirements and things like that. And it really threw him for a loop when I told him that I don't really pay attention to them. She's welcome to have them, but I don't take them into account. I just follow my own standards and principles because I know that if I'm following them and my woman's following them, then she'll benefit from them more than her own standards and preferences. Now, needs is a different thing, but standards and preferences, yeah, she'll benefit, and it'll actually support her needs in a much better way than if I were to placate to her needs, if that makes any sense. Thank you, Guns, for being here and posting up the links. Kevinism, I see you there. What's up? So they were asking me all kinds of questions about, because they were curious about my mindset and how I see things and how I operate and, explaining certain things. Because the lady, she was actually married. Yeah, she was married. And she's like, well, what does she get like as like rewards? Like how does she be, rewarded for her good behavior and things like that? And I said, well, I keep a list. Like I've created a list some time ago just about the things that my girl likes, and those are used as rewards. Okay, so in fact tonight we established that massage would be, because I enjoy giving massage. I'm not necessarily a huge needer of massage. If like my back is sore, sure, I'll have a massage. I like my hands massaged, but it's not this thing that I really crave. All right. So, but for my woman, she really, really likes massage. And I'm like, okay, well, then it can be added as a reward for you. I'm happy to do that for you. And her eyes lit up. She's like, really? Like, it's just funny. So, the wife, she was like, I like to shop. She's like, I like to go on spending sprees, shopping sprees. And I said, well, yeah, I don't dominate my woman financially. I said, but if I was in your situation and I was your husband, I would say, okay, I would give you the proper opportunities to then create the things that would reward you with the shopping spree. And it wouldn't be a no holds barred. It would be, within a certain limit. So I would say like you have X amount of dollars that you can spend up to and no more. And if you do, you like there would be a punishment or that reward would be revoked. Something along those lines. So they were asking me about qualities, like a lot of the guys were curious. They're like, man, like, I really want to understand more about your academy and what you teach. And he's like, I want to think like you do. And, made me blush. And no, it didn't actually. But yeah, it was cool to hear. I mean, he didn't know what he was saying because obviously, like, the dumb thing is to want to think like me. Really, what he's asking is he'd like to learn how to think like himself. Okay, because you guys who are socially conditioned, you're not really thinking like yourself. You're thinking like a version of yourself that you didn't condone to be manufactured. So understand that. Okay, the guys in the pillospheres, they call it being blue pilled. You could just call it cultural conditioning, and understands that this conditioning is something that you did not condone, and also understand that what is done can also be undone. Any sort of thinking, any sort of belief, any sort of pattern can be changed to a new type of thinking, a new belief, and a new pattern. Okay, you're not trapped. You're not a victim. All right, things are not lost. You can change everything. And so these guys were like, well, I want to do this. And I said, the biggest thing, and this is for everybody, this is for all of you guys. I said, the biggest thing that shifted me into being able to be dominant, all right, was when I turned the corner from wanting sexual sensation, all right, and I switched to something a little bit more controlled, right, where sexual lust was not controlling my thoughts and my behavior. And when you start controlling certain thoughts and behavior, it's like over time it starts shifting your perspective. And then once your perspective starts shifting, now your belief structure starts shifting. Okay, and you start seeing the world in a different way. And I think this was the most pivotal point for me. And it wasn't exactly like a light switch. Okay. It's funny. A lot of things that when you're working on them, they're not light switches. It's more of like a blending effect that you go through. You transition from one state to another. And this is like but that's just the way development works within the human psyche. But the funny thing is that when you get to the other side, you get to see the mechanisms behind the curtain, and you realize that it's been a switch all along. And you're like, oh, fuck. Like, had I known better, I really didn't have to do that transitionary type of work. Really, the transitionary type of work is the letting go process of whatever conditioned thoughts, beliefs, patterns, habits, and so on. But when you get to the other side and you can see the mechanisms by which these things are put together, that's when you realize that it's just a switch. People dealing with, some sort of habit or an addiction or, some sort of belief or whatever, just anything that's going on that is corralling behavior in a certain way. It's really just a matter of not doing that thing. Right? Because with the transition, let me just explain this. With the transition, at some point during that transition, there'll be a day where on, say, like Tuesday, you will be with this thing. And then Wednesday, you will not be with that thing. And it just so happens that that's the area where the transition happens. Okay? And so, like between like a sunrise and a sunset, like there's an area where there's a crossover. And the thing is that when you finally do these sort of things, whatever it is you're working on, you realize that you can shorten that time span. And you simply just don't do the thing. Like, that's all it is. You just don't do it. You stop. And so, back onto the sex thing. That's what happened for me. I realized I got to see behind the curtain and go, oh, geez, it's that simple. It's just a switch in my mind. And once you flip that switch and then glue it down, that's when dominance starts. You cannot, and this is what I was explaining to the group. I said, you cannot be dominant if you have not cut your ties to pussy. If you are lusting after pussy, that by default makes the woman your leader, your influencer, whether she's trying to or not. Like, some women will understand this, and they will manipulate, and they will guide you and lead the guy around like a little puppy dog on a collar, right? With a leash. And some women aren't even wanting to do that. And then inadvertently they realize, oh shit, like, this man is being controlled by access to my body. And then her respect goes down. Her desire for you goes down because you're filling the space for the desire. There's no room for her desire to come into the relationship. Whether it's a long-term or short-term, it doesn't matter. Okay. But your lust can really take over. And that's because men's lust moves faster than women's lust. So your lust can quickly fill the space. And this really prevents her from really moving into it. Can you share the space? Of course, right? But I'm saying under usual circumstances, it's the guy who's really, taking advantage of that lust space. And it's actually a position of weakness. So if you want to be dominant, the first thing that you have to do is to bind up or remove or place on the back burner your lust for sexual pleasure. And you guys might think that's crazy. You might think, well, like, why the fuck would I want to do that? Like, pussy's amazing. And you're going to learn. Like, hopefully you learn. But it's controlling you. And you cannot lead if you are following. You cannot be dominant if you are being dominated. Right? It's really simple math. And for the most part, you guys are completely dominated by pussy. And it gets even worse because it's not even pussy that you're actually fucking. It's concept, it's conceptual. So you are being dominated by the concept of pussy. It's not like there's one wrapped around your dick right now, or one between your lips right now, okay? Or sitting on your fingers right now. Nothing. Okay? It's in your head. So, and the funny thing is that nobody really put it there. Well, that's debatable. But the thing is that it's just a thought. So your own thoughts are dominating you, which makes, before you even in contact with a woman, you already arrive dominated. You arrive in a submissive state. And I don't care how tall you are. I don't care how much your bench press is. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how high you can jump. I don't care how fucking fast your car is. I don't care how many people know you. If you have this shackle around your ankle, you're submitted before you even stepped out of your house. I mean, with regard to women, you have already submitted yourself. So just marinate on that. I don't mean right now, but I mean after the show. Right? Now, of course, the systems at large, media, and so on. I've got a bit of a conspiracy theorist strain in me. And it likes to believe that there are systems in place that want to make men more pliable, like clay. And because, an obedient man is a predictable man. And with predictability comes safety for them, like capital T, them, and the ability to make more money, right? Because things that are predictable, you can learn patterns, and then you can make more money when you understand patterns of human behavior, right? You can control their shopping, their shopping behaviors. Okay, so by affecting their emotions and things like that. So there's a lot of things in play for the last few years, engaging men's emotions, which makes them more pliable, and then also upping the ante on this addiction to pussy. Because this is nothing new. All right, like guys have been addicted to pussy for a very long time. Perhaps when we crawled out of caves. Okay. But when media really started to take hold, and not all media, when media became visual, that's when it shifted. When television was designed, and then it got even more amplified with computers, because the information became shorter and faster, and advertising steps in and all this stuff. So they keep pussy on your mind, okay? And they keep it at this little stream that just goes right into your subconscious. And therefore they can control you. All right. You're more supplicating. You become more docile. All right. Especially if you're beating off all the time. All right. Beating off will make you more docile. Right. Because it expends that energy. Okay, now I'm not into the whole mystical thing and all the bullshit around no FAP or whatever. Do what you want. Okay, I don't care. All right, but there's something to be said because of just the nature of how you feel. After you bust, you're tired, right? And it the refractory period takes a while. And maybe if you're fucking 19. It's different, okay? But I'm 47 years old. So these are things that I need to take into consideration. But I do notice that, if I fuck without coming, then I maintain my energy, okay? And then it also goes into my dynamic, because she doesn't always earn my nut, right? Just because I want to relieve it doesn't mean that she's deserving of it. Okay. She likes that. So that can play into the reward system that goes on, and the dominance. Okay. So that's one of the things you can put in your back pocket as well, is this sense of deserving. Okay. Now I've made a list that we can go through. And the first one on the list is confidence. Okay. Now, everything on the list is kind of deep, and we're not going to dive super far into all of them, right? Because even just the concept of confidence is, it can get deep, because there's a lot of parts that make up the confidence, and it's not a standalone system, okay, or a standalone feature within you. Okay, there's things supporting it. Okay, confidence requires a strong self-concept. Okay, because because when you say, well, I'm confident, the I'm is part of that statement, and you're well, who is that? Now, if that I'm is vague, if it's undefinable, if it's requiring of outside stuff to create that confidence and create that self-concept, then it's not very strong. It's a weak self-concept. It might work, right? It might be functional, but it's weak. All right. So with confidence, what gets born of that, or what's not born of that, but is in tandem with it, is self-value. And this is one of the other keystones. Okay. So one keystone is having control over your sexual impulses, having control over your lust. because if that's controlling you, you cannot control another person because you're already submitted. The other part is a high self-worth. Okay, no, I'm not saying going way off into the stratosphere, okay? And, because you'll create like imposter syndrome within you, all right? That we don't want to do that, all right? So, but having self-love and self-respect is enough, right? That's enough to create confidence. And I mean like a calm, relaxed, grounded confidence, not a boastful, big-chested, loud sort of confidence, which can be argued that is not really confidence, and that's a cope. But anyways, so because from having a high sense of self-worth, you get the ability to stand back and say, hold on a second, honey. Everything that I am, everything that I can do, everything that comes out of me from, my actions, my words, my thoughts, my praise, like everything that I can create needs to be earned. None of it is given away for free. My attention is not given away for free, nor is my respect, nor is my love, nor is my dick, nor is my hands, nor is my guidance, my influence, my care. None of it is given away for free. Okay? And certainly not because you're cute. All right? So the thing that kind of happens along with taking the power out of the pussy due to severing or backburnering your lust is you start to lose the influence of beauty. All right. Now, I'm not saying you'll be blind to beauty. I'm not saying you won't be able to recognize beauty. I mean, you will no longer be influenced by beauty. Right? You'll just see a beautiful woman and go, hey, all right. And just acknowledge the aesthetic of her. Okay. But it stops right there. Like it stops at your eyes. It doesn't permeate through into your mind, and certainly not into your actions or your words. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you can't go talk to the woman or anything like that. But because what I'm talking about is influence. Okay. Because from there, if you have a weak self-concept, now this will turn into anxiety. This will turn into, oh, I'm afraid to talk to her. Or it'll turn into something just very base. And you're like, oh man, I would love to fuck that chick. Right? So you see how like a lot of these things are tied together, right? The lust and, having that permeation of her beauty. So, you'll start to get that under control as well once you start controlling the lustful part, because the lust comes from like a lower part. Okay. Like if you're into chakras, it's like the first two, like that's where your sexual energy comes from, like the survival and the sexual energy. At least that's from what I understand. But for you chakra people, there you go. But anyways, so it's a lower region, it's lower vibration. Okay. So you start controlling that and then you can raise things up. Okay. And so those are the beginnings of it. Those are the beginnings of these things, the self-concept, the controlling of lust, and confidence can be born of that. Okay. Because it's very hard to be confident if you have been submitted, right? That means you're on your knees. You've already given in. So how can you be confident and be given in, right? And I'm not saying confident about things that you're doing or your job or hobbies or sports or whatever. I'm saying confident in the self, okay? So the after confidence, right? And and the confidence is surface as well, right? So for like domination, like you should be confident in your role. You should be confident in your decisions. You should be confident in your actions and your words within the dynamic, right? So that means not second guessing yourself, which means educating yourself regularly. All right. The next one if you want to be a dom, is you have to have good communication skills, right? So effective communication is essential for negotiating and setting boundaries, uh, rules, working out desires, understanding needs, expectations between the dom and the submissive. And you can't leave any room for interpretation. You have to be very, very clear with the things that you say. And so it's connected to the confidence. You will, if you're lacking confidence, your communication is going to suck. It's going to be terrible. And you're not going to have the confidence to say exactly what you need to say. This is why when, you guys are just getting into this stuff, I made that video about trying those first 3 commands just to get your feet wet, okay? Which is the bend over, what's the other ones? Take off your clothes and get on your knees. Not necessarily in that order or connected at all, but being able to just say those 3 commands when you want or in the appropriate environment. Okay, you don't want to have her take off her clothes while waiting for the bus. Then you'll become more comfortable just in general, right? Because if you want to do this, like you're with your woman and you want to tell her to get on her knees, but you feel this pang of anxiety, that's a sign that there's something going on inside you, right? If you feel like, oh no, what if she doesn't like it? What if she gets upset? What if she refuses? What do I do? Right? And that's just a cope to prevent you from doing it. Right? It's your mind, your anxious mind preventing action. Just take the action. The worst that could happen is her saying no, or her saying why, or whatever, or you've got to be kidding me, or what did you say? And anything beyond that will lead you to truth if your ego will allow it. All right, the next one here is empathy. Okay, so I'm not talking about being a wet towel. Empathy actually has nothing to do with being emotional. And I think a lot of saps, they misinterpret this. I think they misinterpret empathy for being emotional and emotive, and it's really not. Okay, empathy is understanding. That's all it is. It's with a deep understanding of the needs, emotions, and experiences of another person. All right. Well, in this case, of your submissive. All right, and it's crucial to have empathy for the things that she's experiencing through you, in order for her to build trust and intimacy with you. Okay? Because she's coming to you, right? You're not coming to her. Yes, because you have control over your lust. All right? So she's coming to you wondering, hey, is this guy's container suitable and strong enough and knowledgeable enough to contain me? Okay? So that I can be free from my own mind, right? And empathy is something that you really, really need to exercise quite a bit in a dynamic, because there's going to be things that your submissive goes through, especially if they're not like very, very experienced. Okay, if they're not, then they're going to be going through transitions of their own. And it's going to be psychologically taxing, emotionally taxing, and physically taxing. And, if you go this far, it can be spiritually taxing. Okay. And I think that, without the empathy, it makes them feel like they're alone in this process. Okay. And you don't want them to do that. You want to create the bond. All right. Again, this isn't about you getting pleasure. The pleasure just comes. It just naturally occurs through being dominant. Okay? It's just one of many expressions. Okay? So the next one here is trustworthiness, right? Which is being reliable, honest, and trustworthy. It builds a foundation of trust within the dynamic. Okay. So this goes into being honest. All right. And being honest, as a man first and as a dominant second, uh, it's really, really important that you learn to be honest, uh, especially starting with yourself. And you'd be surprised, like when you start taking that part seriously, you'd be surprised how often you lie to yourself, how often you blow smoke up your own ass. And you cannot truly lead this way. You cannot lead while you're deceiving yourself. All right. And if you're deceiving yourself, there's a high chance that your words and actions will also be deceptive. Not entirely, but it will be tainted with deception, right? Because where it's coming from isn't free of that. It's not free of deception, right? Because that which is producing whatever actions or words is contaminated with this. So, and it's a practice, all right? It's not like poof, one day you're just no longer lying to yourself. It's a process. It's a daily practice, right? Because the mind has this really fucked up, unfortunate thing where it likes to shift out of things where you are trying to put it, right? And then after a while, it gets conditioned and you just stay in these states. But it's a practice that you need to maintain, okay? Because I have the feeling that the mind is like anything else and entropy will affect it, okay? Entropy is just the scientific thing that basically everything breaks down if you leave it be, right? If you take an apple, you leave it on the counter long enough, it'll just completely rot and turn to nothing after a while, right? And this is the case with everything. Some things take longer than others. Like, for example, like shower curtain liners, the PVC that they're made out of, it'll take like 500 years for that shit to break down in a landfill. Just, little FYI. But the mind, I think, is very similar. So if you don't maintain it, then, things revert. Weeds will grow. So you have to constantly maintain that this state is with you, being honest. And through the honesty, you can be trustworthy, right? Because you're not going to be perfect, right? I'm not perfect. I don't know a dom that is perfect. It's sold in the media that like doms are these perfect guys, right? And that's not the case, right? First and foremost, we're humans, all right? So, which means you're fallible. You're going to make mistakes. And if your ego is in the way, that's blowing smoke up your ass, making you think that you're faultless, that, no, you couldn't possibly make any mistakes, then she'll see that. She'll pick up on that, right? Women especially are very good at picking up on when a man is lying to them. She can feel it. Like maybe she can't pick it out like in the actual words, but she will feel it in her bones. And once she starts feeling that from you, it's really hard to get that out of her. Okay? You can, but it takes time. So why start? Okay? Like don't start on a bad foot. Excuse me. Don't start with deception. Start with working on being trustworthy, which means showing up clearly, cleanly, and as honest as possible. All right, next one is being respectful, right? Respecting the autonomy, boundaries, and limits of the submissive. It demonstrates the dom's understanding of mutual respect and consent, okay? This has to be stated. It seems like it shouldn't have to be, but it needs to be stated because a lot of people and one of the guys that I was talking to, he had this misunderstanding of being a dominant is basically like, well, I can just do whatever the fuck I want to do whenever I want to do it, and they just have to, follow along. And it's like, yeah, it really doesn't work that way. Okay. Because like I said, before we are dominance, before we are men, we are humans. Okay. And so humans all deserve a certain level of respect, a certain level of dignity, right? And there's levels to it. There's levels of respect and levels of dignity, but there is a baseline that all humans should get. Okay, next one, patience. This one's huge. Okay, if you are impatient, you're going to be a terrible dom. Terrible. Okay, you must learn to slow down your mind. You must learn to pace it, if that makes sense. You have to learn pacing. Being patient is huge, all right? And because what this does, it allows the dom to navigate the complexities of the dynamics, especially when exploring new activities or guiding a novice submissive, okay? And not just a novice, but even one who is, a seasoned submissive. You still need patience, okay? And not just for her, right? You also need patience for yourself, because there's going to be times where you're going to have this urge to wish that you were better than where you are. And you want to speed up the process, kind of like a little kid who's in a rush to become a grown-up. Don't be in such a rush, okay? Because you're going to miss things. Part of being a good dom is being observant of details, okay? Now, you don't have to be super detail-oriented, but you have to have some level of being able to recognize details. And you can't do that if you're impatient. You're going to miss things. And being patient also works out in play, okay? And it also is linked to lust, right? You cannot be patient if you are guided by lust, for your thirst for pussy. You're impatient, okay? I am very, very patient, which allows me to bring out any sort of necessary punishments and draw out the lessons. It allows me to give lectures. It also allows me the strong ability to tease and deny, so I can draw out her arousal for as long as I want, right? You can't do that if you are impatient. So having patience is one of the, I mean, they're all very important, but this is one of the most important, is being patient, right? Because it's linked to so many other parts of your mind. Okay, the next one is responsibility. Taking responsibility for your actions, your decisions, your words, the well-being of the submissive, of yourself. It's essential. It's absolutely essential to have a sense of responsibility, okay? You cannot be granted the power and not have responsibility, okay? I hear guys like in the manosphere complaining about women and saying, oh man, women, they want all the power and no responsibility. Well, you don't get that choice as a dom. You don't have that opportunity. You don't have that luxury. And honestly, from my perspective, having responsibility is a luxury. I don't see it as work, right? It's not a burden of mine to take responsibility for my actions, my thoughts, and my words, to take responsibility for the well-being of my woman. Like, that doesn't feel like I'm being dragged down, okay? That's a luxury and should be treated as such, okay? It's a very important aspect of this that you've been granted or that you've chosen to bring on. And so you're going to have to treat that with respect. The fact that you are in a position of responsibility. Okay. Now, that's not to say the submissive does not have responsibilities, and these are ones that you give her. She has responsibility to herself, to her own well-being, to her learning and, her own communication. Like, submissives have their own whole set of things that they need to do in order to be a good submissive. And responsibility is one of them. Okay, moving on. The next one is creativity. Okay. Being imaginative and open to exploring new scenes, activities, and dynamics keeps the BDSM relationship dynamic fun and engaging. Okay. often you will slip away. You'll fall off. You'll fall off from your protocols. You'll fall off from, play. You will have just like, regular sex. I mean, unless you are extremely kinky and you have fetishes, all right? It's pretty common for dynamics to also fall into patterns of normalcy, right? Even just the regular stuff like a greeting ritual, using of titles, even your basic rules, okay? Those become normal. There's no longer like an excitement about it because the training has been adapted to. So now this is just regular stuff, right? It's no longer even a thought to address you as my lord all the time with any question and any statement, right? So it just goes into the back of the mind. It goes, it's like a background app where it doesn't really get much play, but it's functioning all the time. And this can drive down the spark, can drive down the interest, okay? So what keeps that up is being creative. So you have to just, have like an ideas notebook, okay? Put your heads together, okay? Because, I've mentioned this before. Women have a massive imagination, huge. So it's not a threat to you, to your leadership, to ask her, what are some fantasies that she has? And some of them will be really outlandish, okay? But you can then ask her, well, what about that turns you on so much? And then you kind of get into these things like, the feelings involved and so on. And then you can start bouncing around ideas or just come into your notebook and start working around ideas based on that information. How can you recreate a similar feeling, right? Without being so, out there, because maybe her fantasy like occurred like on a farm and you live, in like a, urban environment, right? And you have no car. Like it's going to be hard to do that. All right. But it's the feeling that you're after. Maybe not necessarily the exact environment or the exact prop or, the exact circumstances. Okay. Okay. Number 9, we already talked about this, but self-control. Maintaining self-control, especially during intense scenes, ensures the safety and well-being of all parties involved. Now, this is with respect to play, okay? But self-control needs to be an overarching principle within you as a dominant. You cannot be dominant if you lack self-control. If your kinks lead you, you are not dominant. If your fetishes lead you, you are not dominant. If seeking pleasure leads you, you are not dominant. I'm hoping this makes sense because it's very clear to me. You must have self-control. Adaptability. Oh, just really quick. So self-control is over your impulses. It's over your words. It's over your emotions. It's over your erratic mind, and it's over your body. It's having self-control over all of these things because you want to have what I call is the mountain mind. You don't move unless you have good reason to or you choose to. That's the way this works. You are the one who's in control, not all this other shit. Okay? All right. Moving on. Adaptability. Being adaptable allows the dom to respond to the evolving needs, desires, and boundaries of their submissive partner over time. Okay, so people learn, people grow. Certain desires change. Preferences change. Beliefs change. Perceptions change within yourself and with others. And if you are so fixed, okay, you will break. Right? You want to be the oak tree, but you also want to be able to sway, right? if like the strong winds come. You want to be able to adapt, okay? Even in the micro, say like within like a play scene or something along those lines, something could happen that is unexpected, okay? It could be an emergency, it could be a discovery, it could be something that's really funny, okay? And like I've read about guys where, you know, it was this dominant and he was writing, I think it was in a Facebook group or something like that. And he was saying that he was, you know, he was playing with the, you know, with this sub, and I don't know what happened in the description of you know, his scenario, but she started laughing. She like just broke out like in laughter, and it hurt his feelings and pissed him off. Like like as if he wasn't being taken seriously, and she was laughing at him. And you know, maybe it's like some people are like that. Like I actually know my daughter is this way. She'll like as like a maybe it's just a coping strategy or something like that. But when things feel really tense and like really serious, she sometimes can't help herself but to start laughing. And it's not a matter of not taking things seriously or disrespect. It's just that's how her mind handles the pressure. And so that very well could have happened within this guy's play scene. And you know, so when this happens, like he was fixed. So his fixed attitude, instead of being adaptable, caused him to suffer. He got pissed off, his feelings were hurt, and then, you know, it totally shifted, right? And so now the play and the fun turned into, let's focus on his feelings, being butthurt, right? Because his, you know, his dominant male ego couldn't handle the fact that this girl was laughing, and she probably wasn't even laughing at him, right? Just something struck her funny. Who knows what it was? All right. Okay, next one. Leadership. All right, this is obvious, right? Demonstrating strong leadership qualities helps establish clear roles, expectations, and boundaries within the BDSM relationship. Okay. And this ties into the next one because you can't be a good leader without consistency. Consistent in behavior, communication, and enforcement of rules and protocols fosters stability and trust in the dynamic. So my advice to you is if you're setting up any kind of rules, right, or you're discussing rules and boundaries and things of that nature, do not bite off more than you can chew. This is really important, all right? A lot of times, like you might have heard of the term sub frenzy, okay? There's also dom frenzy, where they're like, man, I want to like do it all. You know, I want to come in here, you know, guns blazing and like be the dom of doms and try to be perfect. And this inevitably runs into failure, okay? Just do it in bite sizes, okay? You do it in chunks and allow yourself to adapt, okay? Especially if you don't have a history of management and organization, right? Some people have a long history of management and organization. They're used to it. So they can just take a whole bunch of rules and protocols and plop them down. And it could be like, you know, 24 of them. And they can manage and operate and remember them all the time, no problem. Okay. But a lot of people are not like this. And that's okay. It just means it doesn't mean you can't have 24. It just means you have to break it up into chunks to allow yourself to remember and adapt. All right. So, you know, be consistent. This is what allows you to be consistent, because if you have too much, you're going to forget shit. All right. And when you are unable to enforce, or you forget to enforce certain things, it causes doubt. And this is one of the most poisonous things that a woman or a submissive can inject into your dynamic is doubt, where she's looking at you just a little bit different. And she's like, maybe he's not the guy that I thought he was. Okay? Because maybe he thought he was someone that he actually isn't. So this goes back to being honest, being truthful. Okay? You want to show up clean and clear. And if you don't know fuck all, don't try to pretend that you do, because nothing good will come from that. Okay? Being a good Dom, there is no part of my list here that says fake it till you make it. No, you're going to go about this in a methodical manner. And if you don't know how to be methodical, if you're not naturally methodical, and I'm not, okay, I need to train myself regularly to be methodical. And the way to do that is in pieces, little pieces, so it doesn't feel like it's like this overwhelming giant shift in the way you think, okay? All right, so the next one is sensitivity, okay? Now, this isn't about being emotional, obviously, but it's along the lines of being empathetic, okay? So sensitivity is being attuned to the physical and emotional responses of the submissive, and it helps the Dom gauge reactions and adjust accordingly during BDSM activities, okay? And if you're in like a 24/7 dynamic, the whole thing is a BDSM activity, okay? So because like dominance and submission is happening all the time, okay, in varying degrees. So you have to pay attention, okay? I mean, sensitivity can also be, I think sensitivity is actually a combination of things. It's a combination of paying attention and empathy. This is what creates sensitivity, because you can pick up and understand like body language cues, verbal cues, tonal cues, all sorts of stuff, or even just straight them expressing something, all right? Be it positive, negative, or neutral. It's being attuned to these emotional responses and needs and desires and things of that nature, all right? It doesn't mean that you have to bend into them. It just means that you're paying attention and you're observant of this stuff, right? It's not getting in and making you do stuff, okay? I mean, unless it's an emergency or something along those lines, all right? All right, next one, integrity, all right? Upholding moral and ethical principles, even within the context of BDSM, reflects the Dom's integrity and commitment to mutual respect and consent, all right? And it also shows your commitment to the dynamic and the programs involved in the dynamic, okay? You should actually be the biggest cheerleader of your program, okay? Like, you go to a university, the dean of the university should be the biggest fan of the university. The biggest, all right? And the same is with you. Like, you as the Dom, you should be the biggest fan of the dynamic. And your integrity is both that which creates it, but also maintains it, upholds it, protects it, okay? And this is what having integrity does. It puts your principles, your morals, and your ethics in front of lust, in front of your feelings, okay? Because sometimes your feelings will be counter to what's actually right. Yeah? And this is what makes you having integrity. It's sometimes having to do with doing what's right, even though you feel uncomfortable, or even though you feel sad or angry or happy or frustrated, right? Or anxious. It's knowing what's right because you have principles. Okay? All right, next one is open-mindedness. We've got just a few more here. Open-mindedness. Being open-minded allows the Dom to explore diverse interests, fetishes, and kinks within the BDSM spectrum without judgment. It also allows you to do research into other things that are not just, BDSM or kink related, things about health, things about like mental health, physical health, spiritual health, sexual health, doing research into things, digging into the history of things, getting a full understanding of things, okay? This is what open-mindedness does, and it allows you to come to things without judgment, right? Again, you as the leader, you are the tone setter. So if you bring judgment into your dynamic, then guess what you're condoning? Judgment. And then what is your submissives not allowed to judge? And so that means you're setting up a do as I say, not as I do, which is a terrible way to have a program. Be the example. Number 16, humility, recognizing their own fallibility and being humble in their interactions fosters a more collaborative and respectful BDSM dynamic. Okay. You have to be humble. You have to recognize the fact that you are fallible, that you are going to make mistakes. Okay? And when you do, it's important not to get down on yourself. You don't have time for that. It doesn't produce anything. And in fact, it's a little bit nice guy syndrome-ish coping mechanism, right? Just like, woe is me, I'm sad, this, that, and the other. Okay. Now, I'm not going to break that down. Okay. But if you've read No More Mr. Nice Guy, you look into things around shame and then link that to what I was just talking about with making mistakes and feeling bad, you'll understand that it's a coping mechanism. Okay. You can recognize a fault without going into this whole like guilt and shame space. Okay. It's not necessary. It doesn't help anything. Right? People will take you seriously whether you're crying about your mistake or not. It depends on what you're doing after that. Okay, moving on. Self-awareness. Understanding a dom's own desires, motivations, and triggers enables him to navigate the dynamics with greater insight and sensitivity. Okay, so, like many of these things, they're linked together. There's tethers. And self-awareness is that. Self-awareness is connected to self-knowledge, and it's connected to a sensitivity. It's connected to open-mindedness. It's connected to, having self-respect. It's connected to trustworthiness and honesty. So, this is another one that I think is huge. Right? Being self-aware, because if you can't be honest without being self-aware, they go hand in hand. They cannot operate without one another. Okay. So really important that you have a sense of self-awareness. Okay. Next here is supportiveness. Okay. Providing emotional support and encouragement to their submissive partner outside of BDSM scenes strengthens the bond and trust between them. And you can have them inside as well. Okay. Just being supportive, because, this is part of someone giving their will to you. All right. You cannot be responsible and in charge and not be supportive. Right. So guys will think, like one of the dudes that I was talking to, like he was thinking, well, really, I have all the power. And basically all I do is just like give commands. I sit back, give commands to just whatever I want. And that's not exactly being supportive. Right. Because one of the best things about the BDSM lifestyle, is growth. Growth is one of the greatest things that can occur within these type of relationships. I mean, they can occur in other relationships as well, but I find them to be much more apparent in a lifestyle DS relationship. And through that, you have to be supportive, because this is, and in order to be supportive, you have to understand the other person really well on a deep level. You have to profoundly get them, because from that place of understanding, with empathy and with your guidance and leadership, it's all the things, the hard and the soft, that you can support them to then they become a greater person. They become better. And sure, they could do this on their own, right? It's entirely possible. But when you're helping them, you become this conduit for change, right? you become her locus point, her lightning rod. And now you're this facilitator of her change in self-perception, in self-worth, in her confidence, and all this stuff. Okay. And this is now tied into gratitude, right? Because one of the submissives things that, is expected for them to be a good submissive is having gratitude. So now you're tying these things together, right? The supportiveness and gratitude go hand in hand. It becomes synergistic, right? That's really a lot of what this is about, is creating a synergy between the Dom and the sub. Okay. It's not just this one-way street coming from the Dom's end. That's not it. It's about creating synergy. Okay. Last two here. Knowledgeable. Continuously educating themselves about BDSM practices, safety protocols, consent culture, leadership, influence, psychology, physical and mental health, sexual health. These are all your responsibility, and it demonstrates the Dom's commitment to be responsible and having informed play. Okay, another thing, right? We should put in here is aftercare. Okay, like you should have basic medical understanding. Like you should understand like how to deal with bruises. You should have to you should understand like what to do with different types of bruises. All right. For example, slight contusions, cuts. How are you going to deal with these things? Right. If need be, like, do you know how to perform a suture? Obviously more severe things, you're going to want to call a hospital, but like, let's say you're, visiting a cabin in the woods, right? You should have basic first aid understanding, not just as a Dom, but as a man. Like this is something that you should really know, right? Basic first aid. You should know how to do this stuff. Okay. But that's just one of the many areas where you should be spending time educating yourself. All right. So I advise, cutting down a little bit on social media and taking some time to learn some of this stuff, like learn survival skills, learn how to fish, learn how to hunt. I mean, at least even from just a knowledge perspective, like how to set a trap, right? For like, small game, really easy stuff. Okay. And like when you're reading about how to set these up, you're like, oh my God, like that's so easy. It's like, yeah, because people have been doing this shit for a long fucking time, right? Learning how to trap animals. But there's all sorts of things, right? Just always be a student is basically the point. Always be with the mind of a student, having curiosity, having open-mindedness, looking at yourself and having a clear and honest self-audit. Right? Do you feel well-rounded? Or your knowledge and skills too weighted in one area or another? Okay. And the last one here, while we're joined by some Brooklyn sirens, is empowering. Okay. Empowering their submissive to express their needs, boundaries, and desires contributes to a more fulfilling and mutually satisfying BDSM relationship. So what you want, this is tied into vulnerability, trust, and all that stuff. Okay. A lot of women, and especially a lot of submissives, they are deeply insecure. Okay. They doubt themselves like on so many levels. Okay. And this is actually a trap. Okay. This is a little bit of a prison for them. And so where there's no judgment in your container and your ability to guide and influence their feelings and create space for that, they can express their needs and their boundaries and their feelings and their worries and their desires and their hopes and all this stuff. It doesn't mean you're going to dive in and start placating to that, but the fact that they can just open up, and offer this is what without judgment. Okay, this is what allows them to relax Okay. Because one of the ultimate goals is to help free them from their own mental prison of like having this fucking hamster wheel on hyperdrive. Okay. And this is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to a submissive. Okay. Is the freedom from themselves. Okay. Now that's not to say that they're in a terrible place. Well, some can be, but there's subtle things that if left, if they let go and allow you to take its place, it provides a tremendous amount of emotional and mental freedom. And through that, there's physical letting go, physical freedom. Okay. Before I end here, let me just look at the chat, see what you guys are talking about here. I appreciate everybody sticking around, listening to my drivel, talking about lists and bullshit like that. So, let me see here. Julio, new face. What do you see here? Okay, I want to manage the responsibility and discipline of learning Shibari, but I don't know where to start. Creativity also goes with that. Where to begin? Well, there is a lot of resources on YouTube as far as Shibari goes. So it starts with just basic knot tying. There's a number of basic knots that you have to know if you're really into Shibari. Kudos to you. And this is not just basic rope play. For those who don't know, Shibari is an art form. Okay, it's the art of creating intricate knot work on someone else, and this can include suspension. All right, so it's really involved, and it's looked at, quite stringently, just in the way like any other art form is looked at, right? It's not just like, oh, look, you put ropes on the body, good for you. Like there's levels to it, there's skill to it, there's I don't know, there's a level of I don't know, there's like a level of quality. So yeah, I would say first is to just get yourself acquainted with the different types of rope. Understand that some ropes hold differently than others. Okay, so like nylon rope will hold differently than cotton rope. Okay, it has different properties, like or if they get wet, right? Because there might be sweat involved. One of the worst is cotton rope. I never use cotton rope. This is like the common stuff that you see at like hardware stores. I don't like this at all. And then there's, other ropes that are very strong and they're soft, but they don't hold knots very well. Okay. My favorite rope to use is jute, right? It's just like a natural rope. And it's got like, it's very like kind of the color of straw, and it has all those little hairs sticking off on it. Some people choose to like try to burn those off, but, but the downside of that is it can be very itchy. So, but yeah, get yourself acquainted. I'm sure there's tons of books on it. And then you can maybe look around on social media to find someone who's into Shibari and see if they will take you on as a student. That's probably what I would do. But thank you for the question. All right. And just one other question here. Okay. Question: I have to be okay with the fact that I don't know what I don't know. Well, you just have to be okay with the fact that you don't know shit, right? It doesn't have to be any more complex than that. You just have to be okay with the fact that you don't know things, but have curiosity to know, to find out. Okay. Which a lot of times guys will be, put aside by their own ego. Like their ego will block them from actually finding shit out because they'll feel embarrassed. Like your embarrassment, this is your ego, right? It's just your ego getting in the way. So you actually have to become a little bit more like egoless in order to be a good dominant, right? Because your ego is going to prevent you from feeling like a fool. And it's like, well, when you make mistakes and feel foolish, you can learn from that and through the learning, you grow and you become more knowledgeable. So that's how that works. Yeah, yeah, you're getting ahead of yourself. But yeah, there's tons of great resources on YouTube, just about the basic knots, and and then once you get acquainted with that, I'm sure there's a lot of books. There's probably a lot of great websites, and I'm sure there's if you dig around, there will be people that you can contact for some sort of mentorship or something along those lines. Okay, I'm gonna pull the plug here. Thank you all for taking the time to listen and watch. I hope you guys have a good weekend coming up. We're kind of coming out of our warm weather, so take advantage of this cooler weather with your sweaters and your boots and jeans and all that fun shit. Try to get outside. This is the best air. Like, this is my favorite kind of air, where it's like not freezing, but it's crisp. Feels really good to breathe. So yeah, with that, thank you for those of you who are watching on the replay. I appreciate you. And if you would like to get a copy of my book about how to be a fantastic lover, go check out the links in the description of this video, and it'll take you there. I guarantee that it will increase your sexual prowess without a doubt. If it doesn't, you can have your money back. But I find that hard to believe. Okay, thank you all, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.